was such a beautiful introduction. I was thinking, who is that person that you were talking about? I want to say it's a delight to be here with you today, and I want to thank Carl. You know, Carl, we've known each other for over a year now, and you give so much and volunteer so much to this community. I think you're kind of the core and the hub of this community, and I just want to say thank you for that. I want to thank you, Evelina, for putting this together and for all the emails and meetings and things that went on, and also a big thanks to Lauren. Wait a minute, is that who I'm talking? Lauren from the ICF, who I just met this morning, because it takes a village to put this on, and so I'm so grateful to all of you. Today we're going to talk about group coaching, and you know, group coaching is something that I've been working with for 15 years, and this is also we're also going to talk about team coaching. So what I want to say is everything that I say about group coaching can be applied to teams. And I want to talk about a little bit of a distinction before we jump in. I look at group coaching as concepts. All of these concepts can be used. Group coaching is focusing all of what I'm going to train you with today on a group of people. So if we're in an organization, it could be a group of managers that are in different sections, but they're kind of a peer group. So that's what group coaching would be. Team coaching is a team that is working together, and it could be a team in nonprofit, in volunteers, in any kind of a structure where the team is working together. So I wanted to make that distinction before we go on, and every time I say group, it can be used with a team. So that's what I want to use as our foundation today. So I love this African proverb, and it says, if you want to go quickly, go alone, and if you want to go far, go together. You may have heard this, and I actually say, I want to change this around a little bit, and I want to say, if you want to go quickly and far, go together, because the community can really take you far. And I think that we as coaches, you as a group or team coach, you're here to help others to go far, to make their contributions to the world. You're here to support those teams in working cohesively and in getting greater results than they've ever gotten before. And you're also here to build community in a way that strengthens every individual in the group. You know, people need community now more than ever. Our world needs people coming together in unity. And in companies with tight budgets, group and team coaching are going to become even more popular than one-on-one coaching if they aren't already. I don't have a statistic on that. With the rise of the millennials who are really into experiences, your ability to create an amazing experience for them in a group is going to really differentiate you from anyone else. So I just like to take a quick pulse of who's on the call. If you are doing group or team coaching already, could you just type yes in the chat, and Evelina, could you see how many people are actually doing this already?
Yes, there's a lot of yeses coming in. We have 278 on the call, and there's so many yeses coming in. I'm going to guess we're at least at 100 now.
Okay,
Some people are saying yes, but not all the time. Yeses are still coming in, so I would imagine at least half of the group.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. So I'm hoping that you will get at least one new nugget on this call of insight that you can take away and use for your groups. So I'd like to share the foundation for how I got involved in group coaching. And this is, in this slide, this is a picture of me years ago with my good friend Kate Harper, whom some of you may know. And this is how we started. In 2002, I had a phone call with Kate, and she was thinking about going into coaching, but she was from a very strong corporate background, and she was really skeptical. And she threw every question in the book at me on that phone call. And I remember thinking, oh gosh, she's never going to sign up for this training. And she actually did. And she had been a trainer for years, and she had trained in corporate venues around the world. I personally had my master's in higher education. I had taught at the graduate and undergraduate levels at university. And in our coach training program, we went to this program in San Diego, Coach for Life, and we found something completely different that neither of us had ever experienced before. There was this unimaginable transformation that occurred. And we asked ourselves, how did they do it? You know, and we were kind of skeptical at that point. So we put what we learned, we reverse engineered what happened in that training, and we put what we learned into a training course, and that was the first iteration of my Art of Group Coaching course, which was the foundation of what you're going to hear about today. And it was so interesting. Our own coaches took our course. We were kind of impressed, you know, that we thought we're on to something. And we became true believers in group coaching and in offering this. And since then, I've shared this information with, you know, thousands of coaches, I would say, over the last 15 years. And I'm gonna teach you some of the basics that Kate and I taught in that first program and other insights learned along the way. So the 5 keys to more impact and income through group coaching are structure your group coaching sessions for the maximum results. So we're going to talk about that. How do you structure a group coaching session? Increase your confidence. So I know half of you have already done group coaching. You probably are already pretty confident. So I'm going to share just a few things that might even increase your confidence and also your energy in offering group coaching. The third key is how to handle difficult group members with ease. And I put difficult in quotation marks because I really don't believe anyone is difficult. But I also believe that there are times in groups where as a group coach, we might go, oh my gosh, that person is needs a little extra attention or something. So we'll talk about that. Number 4, ensure group member retention. How do we keep members engaged and coming to our groups? And then number 5, enroll with ease. I do have a slide about enrolling one-on-one, but I also have a slide about enrolling within an organization. So I'll focus on that on the organization today. So the top 3 takeaways I want you to walk away with is greater clarity about anything that's holding you back from running or filling your groups and what to do about it. A strategic plan to build your group coaching offering. So we're going to talk about how to structure that, and confidence to get started right away for those of you who haven't started yet. So there are lots of benefits for group coaching for the new coaches. It's more affordable for clients. There's more revenue for the coach. So even if you're doing this within an organization or on your own, it creates synergy and massive accountability for the participants. You know, not only are you the person that they're being accountable to, but for everyone in the group. And it's also a gateway to one-on-one coaching. So if you do some groups, you can move into one-on-one. And many times in organizations, we're doing hybrid of group and one-on-one. For executive coaches, it does make coaching available to mid-level managers. So many times there's coaching available for the VP and C-level managers, but not for the mid-level. And so group coaching is one way of making it very affordable for those mid-level managers. It allows communication around best practices between departments. So if you're doing team coaching, that's one thing, but if you do group coaching within an organization, many times different departments are in silos and they're working, you know, they're working on their own. And a lot of best practices can be shared if you get groups together of the same level. And as a follow-up to training, now this study is 20 years old, but I still just think it's fascinating. There was an 88% increase in productivity that occurred with 8 weeks of coaching after training, compared to a 22% increase with training alone. I mean, 22% increase from training in productivity is high, but 88 is outrageous. So just 8 weeks of coaching after a training can make a huge difference.
Karen?
So let's, yes.
Sorry, just before you move on, because I thought this would be a good space for you to maybe answer the question that came from Laura Lynn around what is the difference between group coaching and group facilitation?
Yeah, that's a good distinction. I think they're very, very close. To me, I was a group facilitator before I became a group coach, and before I became a coach at all. And so I would facilitate, and I was actually taught in facilitation, I was taught how to bring out people in the group and how to facilitate the energy and the conversation and the engagement and all of that. In coaching, I think for me, it's a little bit more of using the coach approach. So there's more listening, there's even less content. I mean, when I was a group facilitator in the beginning, before I came into coaching, there was a little more content. There's more of that 80% listening, 20% asking questions, and using all of your coaching skills in a group rather than all of your facilitation skills. And I know it's almost like we're splitting a hair here, but it's very different for me, because before I became a coach, I was a facilitator and I was really good at it. But when I applied my coaching skills to facilitating groups, it changed everything, and it made it even more transformational. So that's a long answer, but I think it's about using all of our coaching skills in a group setting.
Thank you, Karen, for that. And on the last slide, there's a few inquiries that came in around the source of that study, and I believe it's the Olivero and Bain and Kopelman that you had cited at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And so just in case anybody doesn't know, if you're looking for the handout for Karen's presentation, you can find it under the handout section of the webinar. It's called Team and Work Group Presentation Slide. Thank you, Karen.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Evelina. Yeah, look up this study. Like I said, it's 20 years old, but it just really, I've used it for years because it's just so amazing to think about the value of 8 weeks of coaching after a training. So I want to talk about a foundation here before we get into our first key, because I really believe that your energy is the foundation of everything and is very important for you as a group coach, and it's probably like the overarching key of what is going to make this group really pop and have great results. So as you know, there's an energy, there's a doing, what you're doing, and that's kind of what I look at in this tree as the branches. And then there's the being. That's who you're being while you're doing it. And that's what I look at in the roots. And what I want to say is make sure when you're a group coach that you manage your energy. So what's in the roots of the tree, to use this metaphor? Your vision, your values, your purpose, what I call your essence energy, the energy that you have when you're most confident and alive and doing your own work from the core of your being. So whatever that energy is, you want to keep that energy strong while you are coaching in your group, while you're doing anything, while you're talking to somebody about getting into the group, a sponsor or even a person that can hire you to bring you into the group. Keep your energy strong. Stay in touch with the roots of who you are. The truth is that people come into your groups because of who you are and the energy and the safety that they feel with you. And so remember that I don't know if you've heard this study. This was by Albert Morabian, 1972. Now we're going way far back. This was my undergraduate days. And you might have heard that study that said 93% of communication is nonverbal and only 7% of communication is verbal, meaning the words. And so 93% of your communication is about your tone of voice, your energy, you know, who you're being. So just remember that this is the most important part of any group experience, is who you are being. And so with all of that said, let's go into some of these keys. So key number one is structure your group coaching sessions for maximum results. We could say your team coaching sessions also. And Kate and I, if you'll remember earlier, I was talking about, we came up with a model, a 6-step model for group coaching back in 2002, and it's worked so well over all these years and been tested by many coaches. So the first step is you want to start with a connection in each group coaching session. And that is just a few minutes long, and it's actually it could be kind of like a warm-up. I don't like the word icebreaker, so I go back to warm-up, just to bring people into the group and have them become fully present and let go of everything that has been happening prior to coming in. So you could use a quote, you could do a very short visualization, take 3 deep breaths, whatever it is that's going to bring them into the group session. The second step is group agreements. And in your very first group meeting, this step could be about a half an hour long. And so that first meeting, you'll want to have that be longer. But after that, you can just share a highlight or a reminder of having group agreements. These are ground rules about how you are going to be with each other. And I'm going to go into these a little bit further in detail in key number 3, because this to me was the secret sauce or the eye-opener that happened to me in my coach training that made all of my groups so much different from before coaching to after coaching. So I'm going to share a lot more about that today. Step 3 of the group is the content. You can have a small piece of content that relates to the theme of the group as a conversation starter if you like, and if not, you can simply ask the question, you know, what are you working on from the last group meeting, and that could actually be the content for this particular group. So this really is about coaching, group and team coaching, and so we want to have very little content. I always say less is more on this one. Step 4 is the coaching itself. And in a group, there are a couple different ways of doing this. One way to do this is as the group coach, you would ask if anyone needed coaching, if they had any challenges or anything they wanted coaching around that day, and then you would coach the one person with everyone else in the group observing. And the way I set this up in a group is I always say, look, if you are being coached, you're in the energy of the question. You're asking this question. If you're not being coached and observing, you're not in the question, and it might even be easier for you to hear the answer for yourself. So each person is really getting coached, whether they're the person that's in the spotlight or not. And so you might take one person to coach, and maybe there's time for 2. The other way to do this is to have everyone in the group share what they're doing, and so you can kind of do more of a facilitation we were talking about earlier in this coaching time. Even though you're the coach and you're asking questions, you could have everyone share a little bit. And the other option, which I've used before, if you have people in the group that have a very high EQ, or that are coaches, or that are used to training, things like that, you could even have the group help with the coaching. And in that way, sometimes I've done maybe 10 minutes of coaching myself as the group coach, and then I open it up to the group and see if anyone has any questions that they want to ask for the person being coached. So just make sure that you have, you're not having people give advice. If people can hold that space, it could be really beneficial to have others asking questions and participating in that coaching session. So there are a few different ways you could do that. Step 5 is ideas for action. So this is generating ideas for action for group members. You want to make requests of people of what they're going to work on between group sessions, and you can do this for one person, say they were coached and they have a request, or you can make a request of the whole entire group. If everyone is working on let's just say work-life balance, you might make a request that people do a inventory of how many hours they're spending at work and at home for the next week, and maybe everyone does that. And then step 6 is the inspiration. You want to leave them in an inspired place at the close of your time together, so you could ask for takeaways, you could ask for all kinds of learning, all kinds of things that you would end with. And by the way, if you're running close to the end of the time of the group, one quick tip for having the inspiration is you could actually call out each person's name and ask them for a word or a phrase of what they're taking away. So if you've got a minute or two left, you could say, John, what are you taking away today? Give me a phrase. Jane, what's your phrase? And so you go through that pretty quickly, because sometimes there's a lot of learning in the group and people want to talk. This is a way to get it done quickly if needed. So also in key number 1, structuring your group coaching sessions for the maximum result, people always ask me this question about timing. Like, what is the timing for each session? How much time should we devote to each one? So let's look at this just in a 60-minute group coaching session. You could actually, your connection would actually be about 2 minutes, very short, that warm-up. Your group agreements and an ongoing coaching group is about a 2-minute reminder. The content, another couple minutes, if that. And then the coaching is about 45 minutes long. So you want to have that be the bulk of the group meeting. Ideas for action requests, about 5 minutes, and the inspiration and takeaways, about 4. This is not a hard and fast rule here. It's just kind of an overview idea of the timing. So let's look again at one other thing in key number 1 to structure your group coaching sessions for maximum results, and that is to have a set of group agreements. And group agreements are, I believe, the superpowers of group coaching. There are 2 types of agreements that I talk about. One is etiquette and logistics. So those are things like if you're on a webinar, state your name when you're speaking, or if you're in person, be on time for meetings, those kind of things, those logistical things. And then there are also communication agreements for how we are going to communicate that can create a lot of safety for the participants. And so I've mentioned these before, and I'm going to go into much more depth on the 3rd key, but some communication agreements are to keep everything confidential, which is probably something that many of us are doing, but also another communication agreement might be to practice a positive focus when we're communicating with others. Another might be to refrain from giving advice to others in the group. Another communication agreement might be to practice self-care when we're in the group meetings. So these are some of the agreements that I'll talk about in just a moment that really make a huge difference. This slide I just put in here. Evelina gave me a great introduction, but I do want you to know I am an outlier in group coaching. In fact, I have over 10,000 hours in running groups, learning about groups, training people about groups, all kinds of things. Probably a lot more than that because I had 10,000 hours maybe a few years ago. So you can tell I have a big passion for groups. So let's talk about key number 2, to increase your confidence. And one of the things that can really increase confidence in offering groups is to have a specific structure and use it each time. This is what I found. So let me ask a question before we get started. What do you think your confidence level now is in offering group or team coaching? I'll just be curious if you'd like to share. If you'd like to type it in the chat on a scale of 0 to 10. I don't think there's any zeros here. Let's see what we've got, Evelina.
Sure. I'm seeing a lot of 7s, 8s, 9s. A couple of 10s, some 3s and 4s. So one is 15. Wow,
I want to know you.
So if I were to guess at an average, I'd say around 6.5 to 7.
Fantastic. Wow, we have got, so I can't wait till the Q&A because I might be learning things from you. I'm sure I will. So to increase your confidence, even just a little step, have an outline for each meeting. So you want to have a specific structure. You could use the 6 steps as I just shared. Number 2, prepare the structure of your group to get the maximum results. So make decisions about how many people do you want in your group? How much time do you want? Do you want to do an hour, 90 minutes? Is 2 hours too long? Like all of those decisions, prepare that structure in a way that is right for you because you are the one that knows. For instance, 2 hours is too long for me to do a group meeting. I know that. I can feel my energy start to dip. If I have 6 people, 1 hour sessions work fine. If I have up to like 8 to 10 people, 90-minute sessions work fine for me. If I have more than that, I get a co-facilitator. So just know what that structure is that's going to work well for you. Number 3, have an energy management system in place for yourself and your participants. Working with groups can sometimes be draining. There are a lot of different agendas and paths, even though maybe the overarching agenda is the same. There are lots of individual agendas, and for yourself, you can use the same energy management tools that you use for yourself in one-on-one coaching. And for the group, utilize the group agreements to help them manage their energy. I know I'm talking a lot about the group agreements. We're going to get to them really, really quickly. And number 4, create a compelling marketing process that you can use over and over again. So if you have a brochure or a proposal or something that has worked before, keep that right there and then use that over and over again, and it will increase your confidence. The one person who has 15, you can close your eyes for the next slide, and then we'll go back. So also, what will increase your confidence is design your marketing to reflect the actual group experience. And this may not be completely relevant with teams in organizations, but I think it's worth talking about here. Align your marketing language with the actual group experience and testimonials of past participants. How you're describing your program, even to a sponsor, is really important. You want to think about the words and the phrases you're using, because that is going to be in alignment with the people that come into your group. And I remember I offered a group years ago for new coaches, and there was one experienced coach that registered. And after that first meeting, she called me, and we ended up moving her into one-on-one. And I look back at my marketing language and my brochure, and I could see that it wasn't clear enough who this group was for. So before you're going to talk to somebody about bringing a group together in an organization, be very clear on who this group is for. Ask your favorite clients to share 3 qualities about you and use these kind of words in your marketing. So I'm going to go past that because that may not be as relevant here today. Key number 3, this is the heart of what I want to share with you, how to handle quote-unquote difficult group members with ease. And having group agreements and going over them and getting agreement from everyone in that first session, we talked about taking extra time, makes it easier to handle all group members. It's the superpower of group coaching. So for the person who dominates the group, let's talk about these agreements. What would be an agreement? One of the agreements I use in the beginning says, I refrain from drawing attention to myself. So when someone has agreed to that at the outset, if they tend to dominate, they're going to be thinking about this. It's going to bring it to their awareness. And what do we say? Awareness is about 80% of the way there. If the person starts to dominate, then we can gently bring this back to their awareness at any time during the group. So they've made the agreement to it, and it will help them to self-manage. What about those who don't say anything at all in a group? There's an agreement that I use that says, I release telling others what they should do, feel, or believe, or how they should act. So it's interesting because this agreement actually helps me as a group coach, because as a group coach, I agree to these too. I realize that another person's participation in a group may not show up as I believe that it should. And there are those who are fully present and adding to the energy of the group without even saying a word. And that's perfect. And when I've made that agreement that I release telling others what they should do, I don't feel a need to manage who's talking and who's not. I can let them have their own experience and accept them. And if I want to check in and see if they want to share, I can ask them, is there anything you'd like to add? And I can also say, if you'd like to pass, you're welcome to do that. So with this agreement, the introverts of the group will feel very safe and honored. Those who need more time to gather their thoughts can share whenever they want to, even in a future group meeting, and they don't feel put on the spot. So that is really a big help, having an agreement when someone isn't talking at all. And what about the person who complains in the group? You know, how would this work? There's an agreement that says, I will practice a positive focus. This agreement is going to help this person to take another look at what they want to share and to share it in a positive way. So it's not about being positive, but it's about focusing on the positive. It's about focusing on the solution. When we realize that what we focus on expands, and that's really true, then they can make a choice to focus on what's working rather than what's not. And I can invite them to do that. And what happens when someone criticizes in a group? If one group member gives another one constructive criticism, you know, my mentor, Peter Redding, always said constructive criticism is an oxymoron. So he would explain that, like, if people were being criticized, they're going to shut down, and it's really hard to hear anything that anyone has to say. So there is one agreement that says, I will give only authentic and positive acknowledgement and support. So giving only positive acknowledgement and support means no criticism. And I want to share about this agreement. Giving only authentic and positive is really important. So if I only give positive acknowledgement, but it's inauthentic, it comes across as flattery and no one believes it. It's not a good way of supporting someone in communicating. And if I give authentic but critical support, it can shut people down. So I want to do both of those, authentic and positive acknowledgement and support. And it brings a safety to the environment whenever people know they can say what they want without being interrupted by someone else's idea of what they could be doing better. So, so these are ways having these agreements will help handle the group members with ease. Now, I also get a question about, well, what happens if somebody has these agreements and they break the agreements? What do I say when that happens? And it's very, very simple. What you want to do is you want to make a request that they honor the agreement, and you can easily do this in a question. For instance, if someone is criticizing, or if someone's complaining, you could say, Joe, how could you share what you just said while keeping a positive focus? Or if someone is dominating the group, you could actually say to the group, ask a question and say, I'd like to hear from someone who hasn't spoken yet. So there are ways to do this and to communicate with people that are not going to put them into a situation where they're being criticized, but to just request that they step up to these agreements. And I do want to share, I did not, this is not in the PDF that I sent out, but maybe, Evelina, you can type this in. If you want a copy of the communication agreements that I use the Standards of Presence, which are from the Inspired Learning Foundation, and those are at groupstandards.com. So if you want to get a copy, just go to groupstandards.com and type in your name, and it'll be sent to your email address that you give to your inbox. And I'm not saying that the standards of presence are the be-all and end-all of this, but they do make a huge difference. And if you get those standards and you use them as a rough draft and create your own agreements, what do you want to happen in your group that's going to create a lot of safety, and give those out at the very beginning and have people all agree to those or modify them as they wish, then it makes for a huge help for the group. So let's talk about key number 4, which is ensure group member retention. So sometimes people don't show up for meetings, right? And as their coach, I really want to encourage them to be there and get what they receive, what they're there for in the group. So you could create interest by offering incentives, sometimes, offering a book or having some kind of a contest. For sales teams especially, they love contests. Who made the most calls this week will get a copy of the sales team handbook guide or something like that. I'm making up that name. But those kind of things can really help people show up for the group. And you can do that anywhere, in a team, in a group. Create some kind of incentives and even some contests, like from one group meeting to the next. If you offered, how many people could work on their self-care this week, because self-care is a big thing for anyone in organizations, anyone in life, I think. And then at the next meeting, have everyone share what they did and have the group vote on the person that made the best strides in the past week and give them something. And like I said, a book is a really good thing. It doesn't have to be anything expensive. The other thing is, if there's somebody that is missing group meetings, be a coach, reach out to them, check in with them one-on-one and see if the group is meeting their needs. You could ask them simple questions like, what would they like to see more of, and what would they like to see less of? What is working for them and what is not working? Now, this isn't a place to invite criticism. It's just to really find out what's going on for them. And it could be a logistical thing. It could be that they have a certain meeting that all of a sudden got put in place on top of when the group is meeting and that they can't get out of. And that's something that, is good to know. So please don't take it personally, but just ask and find out what is going on for them, and then find out how you can support them. you know, sometimes people are, they have to be in the group. Like if they're in an organization and a team or a group, they're mandated to be in this group, and it's tough for them. They've got a lot of stuff going on, and maybe they really don't want to make this meeting. So talk to them and find out how you could work with them, how you could give them the most freedom, yet see if there's any way that they can make the group. And the last thing to ensure group member retention is to measure the results of what's going on in your group or team meetings, in the goals that people have set out for themselves. So, you know, what gets measured gets done, and it also is, it makes things interesting to know that things are going to be measured. And you can use a very simple scaling, like in the very first group meeting, asking people, what is your goal for being in this group? And then halfway through, on a scale of 0 to 10, what is their goal? Where are they now? And at the end, where are they now? So it helps them to see their forward progress. Now let's look at key number 5, enrolling with ease. This is actually a little bit more for a one-on-one, so I'm going to skip this slide and go into organizations and the process of working with sponsors and enrolling people into groups. Did you know that almost 3/4 of corporate engagements are done by referral? 3/4, that's a huge number. So the first thing I want to say is it's really great to be referred to a sponsor. And when you are referred to a sponsor and you have a meeting, you start with a consultation, and this is where you really want to dig in and use your coaching skills, assess the challenges that the organization is facing and what they think should be done about it. What is the purpose of this group? And remember, you know, listen a whole lot, take a lot of notes, schedule a follow-up session for the next week, and prepare a proposal. You can do a very simple proposal that can even be done in a simple email, and have that follow-up session to go over the proposal. And when you receive the business, make sure to take a baseline measurement before you begin so that you can track the progress with numbers and percentages. And I'll just share a quick example of how this works. I'm doing a group coaching engagement for an organization here in Tucson, not Tucson, it's in Arizona, Freeport-McMoRan Mining Company. And I was referred to the organization by one of my former students who's a coach but also worked in HR at that organization. And so we talked, I spoke with actually the director of learning. He wanted to train some managers in group coaching actually. And so we spoke about that, and one of the things I did is I brought in, on the engagement, I brought in the person who had introduced me in the organization since she was a coach, and I said, would you like to do this with me? And she was thrilled, and that gave me a lot of insight into the organization. It gave me access to her and her knowledge. And so we've done a 6-month, we just finished phase 1 of a group of 10 people that were learning these group coaching skills. And when we went to their meeting, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, these managers were just glowing about what they had done and about how they were using basic coaching skills in groups to bring people together, and it was just amazing. And we did take some metrics in the beginning, and we took some very simple metrics a couple weeks ago. We haven't done the report yet, but they were really, really happy. So this stuff works beautifully, the group coaching and training managers in group coaching. So I want to stop now. I want to review the 5 keys, and then I want to open it up for Q&A. So first of all, you want to structure your group coaching sessions for maximum results. Next, you want to increase your confidence. Even if you're at a 15, maybe what is it going to take to put you to a 20? I don't know. Ask those questions, right? Number 3, handle difficult group members with ease. Number 4, ensure group member retention. And 5, enroll with ease also. So I do have a couple, I did put groupstandards.com here. Also, if you want to get a copy of that group coaching model, the 6-step model that I shared, there's one at groupcoachingmodel.com. The other thing I want to say is, I'm here with you right now, and yet there may be a question that occurs to you tomorrow or the next day or next week. Please send me an email, info@karencappello.com. I promise I will answer every question personally. This is one of my favorite topics, and I just love to talk about this. So if there's any questions that don't get answered today, please let me know, and we can get those answered at any time in the future. So Evelina, I'm going to open it up for questions and see if we have any questions in the chat, and
Great.
we can go from there.
Great, we have lots of questions, and thank you so much for that offer to the community, Karen. So let's start with the most recent questions, and then we'll back up from there. So quite a few people are asking if you could share a little bit more, maybe some examples of the kind of metrics or desired outcomes that you would use with groups.
Yeah, those are good. So so it depends on what the group is coming together for. Like with the group that we did at Freeport, we asked them about their confidence in being in coaching their team members, and these were managers. We asked them about their abilities to communicate and get the members of their team to do, I can't remember exactly how we worded it, get them to do what they needed them to do, have them take ownership of projects, initiative. Those were some of the things that we used there. And when we started, and then when we ended, we asked them how that was at the end. So I think it really depends on the why you're being hired into the company and what the sponsor wants the outcome to be. Like, we really co-created this with Scott and asked him, what would be a really huge result at the end where you would say this was totally worth the time and money that was spent on this project. And so that's where we started, and we looked at all the different things that he was looking for. And I think our metrics were only about 5, because this was about a 6-month project at phase 1. And then we didn't want to go too far ahead because they'd never done this before. So we took, I believe, 5, and I can't remember what they are right now. My co-coach was the one that was taking care of that process. So I would say have a smaller number, but co-create that with what does the person that's hiring you really want to have happen here.
Great, thank you, Karen. And actually, just to follow up on that, some of the questions that came out were around what do organizations or teams usually reach out to you for when they say, I need some group coaching, and what's the length of time that you typically work with them?
Yeah, so I would say I see organizations reaching out for a few things right now. Communication is still a big one. Organizations know that they need support with team communication. They also, conflict resolution, I think, is a big one too, where things are happening in teams that they need to get everyone in alignment moving forward. Millennials is coming up. I don't think it's as popular right now. It's just starting to be. But in about 3 years, 50% of the workforce is going to be millennials. So I think especially leadership coaching for millennials, and you could do those in teams. The millennials love having experiences together. So that's another one. I'm trying to think of some of my clients. They're looking for customer service. There's one of my clients is working with she's worked with car dealerships on customer service and having like that exceptional model of service, and how do you create that in a team, in a work group that is just noteworthy and getting some great results that clients are actually saying, talking about their experiences. So I think those are some off the top of my head.
Great. You mentioned that referrals are really important, and I think are 75% of the reason why you'd get into group coaching. What would you recommend for those that are new to group coaching and are trying to get those referrals to begin with? Any tips on enrolling with ease?
Definitely. So think about who you know. And one of the things I see coaches do is, we've had a past life, a past experience, and sometimes we don't really leverage that when we come into coaching. So I'll say to people like, who did you have lunch with when you were in corporate before you became a coach? Who do you know of all these years that you were before you were a coach that you really got close to? Maybe somebody that you were on a board with. All of these things, like, you probably know people who can bring you into organizations. You could look through your LinkedIn contacts and connections and start talking to them. And one of my colleagues sent out a very simple email to all the people she knew from corporate, and she was actually out of corporate for about 5 or 6 years, and she sent out this very simple email and said, I'm doing some work with leadership communication in organizations, working with leaders who really need help on their communication style, and if you know anyone, let me know. And she sent it out to all these people without overthinking it. And one of the gentlemen she sent it out to, she had his home and work emails, and they both bounced. They both bounced back. He never got the email. And I'm not kidding you. I asked her this question 5 times, and she said it was true. The very next day, this man, after 5 or 6 years of not talking to her, contacted her out of the blue and said, I think you're a coach. We've got a leader in our organization that's having some challenges with communication. Can you help us? He never got those emails, but he contacted her the next day. So there's an energy out there that if you start talking to people, if you start connecting with people that that know you well, and let them know that you're doing this, they're going to know somebody or that needs this, or they're going to know somebody that knows somebody. Like, just really start connecting with people that you know well.
Great, Karen. So an interesting question came in from Margaret. She wanted to know, how do you create a sense of urgency for the client when their business is doing really well?
Well, Margaret, that's a good question. So I guess you'd need to know, if their business is doing really well, is there something else that's going on, or something that's about to happen maybe in the next year or two that you know of in the industry or in the external business environment that could impact them, that you could share with them? Like, for instance, that millennial thing. A lot of the baby boomers put off their retirement because in 2008 we had the problem with the stock market here in the US, at least. And so they put off their retirement, and they have been filling in the gap for a lot of the millennials who want to work smarter but not harder, and they don't want to work long hours. And I have a prediction that when the baby boomers start retiring, and they are starting to retire, and there's more millennials in the workplace, that it's going to start affecting the bottom line, and they're going to start seeing something that they're not seeing yet on the bottom line, because the baby boomers are covering the time. But once they see that, they're going to be scrambling to get these millennials up to speed on leadership. And it's a different ball game. And if they can find coaches who can work with these millennials, and bring them into leadership, that could be a really big deal. So, and not all millennials are like this. This is a complete overgeneralization, but it is a trend. So I think to bring a sense of urgency to somewhere that's doing well is to look at the trends and say, okay, in 1 or 2 years, is what you're doing still going to be working, or is there something else? The other thing you could do is, if you're already in the company and you're doing some groups, at the very end of whatever the phase is for the group, you could actually ask, what's the next thing you need to learn? What's the next thing that you see that is going to come up as a challenge for you that you want to be ready for? So asking the people in the organization also will really help create that sense of urgency.
Great. So we're at the top of the hour, Karen, but I know you said you'd be willing to stay another 10 minutes or so. So for those of you that are still on the line, I'll throw out a few more questions for you, Karen. A few people were asking about the rules of engagement that you were talking about and are wondering, do you present those or do you co-create those with the group? And what happens if an individual is refusing to honor the group agreement?
Yeah, so you do create those, co-create those with the group. You design those in that very first meeting. And I always recommend having some list of standards or agreements that you want to bring to the group, and then you can say to the group, okay, we're going to go through these one by one, and we're going to get agreements, and if you don't agree with it as it's written, modify it. And then we're going to get agreements on that amendment or modification. So if the people in the group are agreeing with the spirit of the agreement, but they want to modify something that aligns with the spirit of those agreements, that's fine. So for instance, let's just take confidentiality, since most people have worked with that. If you have an agreement for confidentiality and somebody says, I can't keep that agreement, well, I don't know if that person could really even be in the group. I mean, there are certain agreements that if you can't keep that kind of agreement, it may not be facilitate the safety of the group. So that one might be non-negotiable. And in that case, you'd have to talk to that person or maybe the sponsor and find out what's going on and how this is going to work. But let's just say there's one agreement there that says, I will the positivity. I will practice a positive focus, and I will focus on the 98% or more of my life that's going right. That's one of the agreements. And I was in a group one time where one of the women said, you know what, 98% of my life is not going right, but and so we said, well, what percentage is? And she said 80. So we modified that agreement to say I will focus on the 80% of my life that's going right. So it worked for her and it worked for everyone else, because if they had 98, they had 80. So that was fine, and they all said yes, and so we modified that agreement. So I think there are two ways. One, if it's something that is going to really not create safety, then there needs to be a one-on-one conversation with that person if they really are meant to be in this group. And if it's something that can easily be modified and still create safety, then modify that agreement for the whole entire group, the length of the group that's meeting.
Great, thank you, Karen. And related to the confidentiality issue, Cora Lynn brought up a good question. So she asked, when coaching a team and then coaching individuals at the same time, one-on-one, how do you manage or balance the individual confidentiality given that there's accountability to achieving the team results?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think for me, if I'm coaching an individual and the team, I would never ever say anything about anything that happened in that individual session, no matter what, if it impacted the team or not. I would encourage the person to share with the team, but I would never reveal anything. Now, if that person wanted to share it, that's fine. But and sometimes, as a coach, you will get into a situation. I was in a situation like this where I knew that there was a team member that was going to be leaving. And I knew that in my individual one-on-one, and I did not share that anywhere. I encouraged her to share it with the team, and she did at the time that was right for her. And I just kept that confidential. Even though the team was making some plans, I still really felt like that confidentiality for the one-on-one coaching was needed to be honored, and then move into the confidentiality of what was shared in the team. I don't know if I'm answering that properly, but that's what's coming up for me.
Mm-hmm. And one of the questions that came up earlier from Vicki is if you could share a little bit more about how you go about working with a co-facilitator when the group is large enough that you feel it's important to have someone co-facilitate or co-coach with you. Mm-hmm. Can you just share a little bit about what that's like?
Yes. So when I work with a co-coach, I will use the same set of agreements. Like, we will go over these agreements of how we're going to work together. And one of my commitments to my co-coach is that I will make that person look brilliant in the front of the room, and there will be no contradictions or anything like that. And they will do the same for me. Like, we are really a team. If something happens, they'll have my back, and also I will theirs. And if there's anything that's going on between us, that we'll clear it before we have a coaching session when we're co-coaching. If any questions come up, we're not going to ask them in front of the room. We're just going to make a note, and we'll deal with that later. One of the things I found that works so well for me is I'm really good at the beginning of a project. I have a lot of energy at the beginning, and then my energy kind of wanes a little bit. And my co-coach in this project, one of the reasons I chose her was she is a closer. So in the beginning, she kind of like takes in all this information, sits back a little bit, and then she starts synthesizing and closing and bringing things together. So we work just beautifully together because we had this complementarity. When my energy was strong in the beginning, she was kind of sitting back and listening and doing things. And then when I was waning a little bit, I could sit back and she could take charge and bring all these pieces together. So I think looking for somebody that has a complementary skill set is also, a really, it's really great. Now, it doesn't have to be that way. Having the agreements with your co-coach, I think, is the most important thing. And whatever those agreements are, you could use any agreements, but talk about it. What do you want from this engagement? How do you like to work? And really have that conversation in the beginning. It will make a huge difference.
Great. So Karen, let's take a couple more if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
So one question came up around sort of structuring pricing, because they imagine that it's different for individual versus team coaching. Can you share a little bit about how to structure pricing for group coaching?
Yeah, as a rule of thumb, and this is just a broad rule of thumb, anywhere between 25 and 50% per person of your one-on-one coaching. So let's just say, to use a very round number, you're charging $1,000 a month for one-on-one coaching. You would want to charge per person anywhere between probably $500, and you could do less. You could do a lower charge if it was a beta group or a beta program or project. Maybe you could go down even to $250 seems like too low, but somewhere between around 50% per person. But if they have a bigger group and you have a co-facilitator, you might want to go, you could go to even 25% of your one-on-one per person, and because that will still give you, what you need for that engagement. That's just a really broad brush stroke there.
Right. Thank you, Karen. And maybe we'll wrap up on this question. Do you ever find that organizations want ROI, so return on investment information up front? And how would you go about strategically including that as part of the proposal process?
Yeah, the thing is, I have not noticed that. in my experience, but I have been one of those people that have been recommended into organizations. So every single corporate engagement I've had, I've been referred. And so I have not been asked for that, but there is a, there are lots of statistics on this. Like, there are a lot of studies, there are a lot of quotes out there on the ROI of coaching in general. And so I might put some of those in my proposal. And I actually have, a sheet of those that I could send to. Could I send those to you, Evelina? Could you get those to people, or once
Sure.
we close out, are we done?
Sure, we can do that. We'll make it available somehow.
Okay, I'll send this out. This is it's just a group of quotes that I've pulled together about the ROI of coaching in general, and quotes from different places, and I think that helps. I think people who are doing group coaching all the time, could, or corporate coaching all the time, could pull some of these statistics together. But I think for most of my clients, we will use these in proposals, and I'll send those out to you.
Great. And Deanna also shared that ICF also has a sheet with some ROI data, so we can dig around for that one. Thank you very much for sharing that, Karen. So I know people have stayed around a little bit longer. The webinars are an hour, and you will still receive your CEUs even though you have to leave at the top of the hour. Karen was kind enough to stick around a little bit longer. For those of you that have those burning questions that we didn't get a chance to answer, Karen's more than happy to answer your questions. Can you just share one more time, Karen, how people can reach you?
Yes, it's on the slide here, info@karencappello.com. So just send me an email. I get all the emails that come in, even the ones that go to info. And if I see an email from you, I will respond to you because I just love this topic. So please ask away.
Thank you, Karen. I had my questions box sitting over top of your contact info, so I didn't see it. Anyway, there's lots of comments coming in saying really terrific, wonderful info. You're great as